Welcome to the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast for CHSN. It's brought to you by Toyota. Toyota has more all-wheel drive and four-wheel drive vehicles than any other brand. Find yours and shine on Toyota. Let's go places. We're Charlie Roumeliotis. I am Pat Boyle. The Blackhawks lose back-to-back games. One from the team from the D, the Detroit Red Wings, and the other in Big D, the Dallas Stars, getting a goal in each of them, losing 4-1 on Wednesday night, 3-1 on Thursday night. Charlie, what were your takeaway from those two losses back-to-back?
Yeah, I feel like we're riding a roller coaster here. Every time we do a podcast, it's like good week, then bad week, good few games, then bad few games. And so Hawks losing back-to-back games against Detroit and Dallas. Was disappointed in the effort against Detroit because I feel like that was a very winnable game against a Detroit Red Wings team that gives up a lot of chances. Not a great special teams team. They're offensively, they don't generate a ton of shots. So it felt very winnable by the Blackhawks. And for them to come away with a 4-1 loss was disappointing. The Dallas one feels less disappointing just because I feel like I saw it coming. You know, it's a very good Dallas Stars team. And it was like almost identical, the same script as the last time the Blackhawks were in Dallas, where they fall behind 2-0 through 40 minutes, don't look great doing it, have this big push in the third period, but fall just short. And then the empty netter in the final minute kind of seals the deal. So disappointing for the Blackhawks not to get a single point from the weekend. Was probably a little bit more frustrating the loss against Detroit because it just felt very winnable.
You know, it's frustrating watching this team because they can't get momentum going in a game for 60 minutes and they can't get momentum going in a week and stack victories. I mean, the fact that they were looking at, you know, their first 3-game win streak in over a season, since Patrick Kane was on the team. I mean, that blows your mind. They had that opportunity to stack 3 wins together for the first time since Kane was with them. Then you see those third periods like you saw in Dallas, where it's a desperate play and they're creating chances, they're creating offense, they're in on the forecheck, they're getting quality looks. And you're like, well, where was that, the first 30 minutes of this game when they were down 2-0 and didn't have a lot going on and had 5 shots on goal? It's and I feel like it's sort of, it's the same line of questioning we've had pretty much all season. They're not going to take moral victories this year. They're looking to make that step. They're looking to win games this year and, not pat themselves on the back for a try hard or we were in this game type of effort. But time and again, 15 games in, that's kind of the talking points that we're having on this podcast and on our post-game shows and on our pregame shows.
Yeah. I like what Nick Foligno said after the Detroit loss. He said when I think he was asked about not being able to win a third game in a row for the first time since before he was even on the team. And he was saying sometimes just winning ugly and stacking ugly wins in a row, even if they're not pretty, leads to pretty wins. So it's like, I think what he's saying there is even if you just find a way to win, even if it's an ugly win, it's like if you can stack 3, 4, 5 wins in a row, it's almost, you're going to get confidence from that alone. And people are going to come, the players are going to come to the rink. They'll be happier. They're going to be more lively. The practices are going to be more concentrated and better because guys are in better moods. And so even if they would have found a way to win against Detroit, just to stack a third win in a row, like we just being at practice after when they got home from the road trip, everyone just seemed livelier. Like the practice was energetic. Guys were joking around, and it's just because they had won 2 in a row. And so it's more fun to come to the rink when you're doing that. And so I don't mind the mentality of what Nick Foligno was trying to say there and just saying, hey, let's just find ways to win hockey games. We don't necessarily have to, it doesn't have to be pretty while we're doing it. Let's just find a way to grind out 2 points. And over time, once we get confidence that we're stacking some wins in a row, maybe the prettier wins are going to start to come, because then internally they're starting to feel good about themselves as a team.
Major shakeup in the lines on Thursday night in Dallas. He bumped Taylor Hall to the Bedard line, and Reichel was up there. We saw Reichel. He's been up on that Bedard line off and on for the last few games. The second line was Teuvo Teravainen, Kurashev, and Bertuzzi. He reunited the checking line of Foligno, Dickinson, and Joey Anderson, and then Mikheyev, Donato, and Smith were your fourth line. Your thoughts on reuniting that checking line? That they seem to play the game the right way. They're very consistent. You know, he likes to start games now with them because we know how important starts are, and he just has that much faith in the Dickinson line to if they don't create a scoring chance, they're going to defend well and not give up one.
Yeah. The Foligno, Dickinson, Anderson line last season was one of their most consistently dependable lines, and not flashy by any means. Just, you know what you are going to get with them. Like, they're very predictable together. And I think, can't remember this off the top of my head, but I think they combined for like a +4 goal differential at 5-on-5 last season when they were together. So the positive things were happening when they were on the ice, but it was more about what they weren't giving up. It was lower quality chances. They weren't giving up a ton of shots or quality scoring chances, and they were oftentimes going up against the opponent's top line. The only problem with that is, and we're going to get to the faceoffs right after, is now Nick Foligno and Jason Dickinson are on the same line, and Nick Foligno is the best faceoff guy the Blackhawks have right now, winning at, I think it's like around 60%. Weirdly, he took 3 faceoffs against Dallas and lost all 3 of them. But you take away Foligno from one of the other 3 lines that don't have a guy that can win a faceoff, and it's really hard for the Blackhawks to identify that guy to play the center position, but also win faceoffs, so the Blackhawks aren't chasing the puck like they did against Dallas, where they won 29% of their draws.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the faceoff woes of this team. They lost 71% of the draws against Dallas. You're usually then starting a shift without the puck. You're trying to get the puck back if you get it back, and it's we're seeing problems, you know, in key situations. Look at power plays. You know, that's another thing. I think against aggressive penalty kills, boy, this team struggles to set up the power play and create scoring opportunities. I don't know what the answer is on the power play. I know they're trying different looks in different units, but it is, you know, for a team that struggles to score, you need to get something from your power play, even if it's just some sustained pressure to get confidence going to bleed into your 5-on-5. And, you know, they had 3 power plays on Thursday night. They get the Bertuzzi goal on a power play goal, but the other 2 power plays, one of them didn't generate a shot on goal. It's just wildly inconsistent, and against aggressive penalty kills, it's futile.
Yeah, and even the first power play the Blackhawks had against Detroit, I counted 6 attempted zone entries for the Blackhawks. They failed at 5 of them, and it was really difficult. I think they went 4 in a row of just couldn't even get into the zone, and that for me is the most probably alarming or annoying thing. Is it's one thing to actually get into the zone, and you're just, you can't get set up, or you're trying to find a pretty shot, because that's kind of correctable. You could just say, okay, hey, let's just get pucks on the net and kind of go for some rebounds. But when you can't even get into the zone, I mean, you're not even giving yourselves a chance. And then that is spilling into the 5-on-5 game for sure, because it's like, well, if we can't score 5-on-4, how are we going to score 5-on-5? It's somehow even more difficult. So it's frustrating too, because the Blackhawks had success early in the season. The 4-game road trip, it was like, wow. And the San Jose game too, the home opener. It's like, okay, this is not what we expected, because the power play really struggled in the preseason and in training camp. But when they started out the first 5 games with, the eruption in Edmonton and the home opener against San Jose, you're like, okay, the Blackhawks might have something cooking here. And then it's weird how manic the highs and lows are. It's not just, they got some chances, just couldn't capitalize. It was, at the beginning of the season, it was they were getting chances and capitalizing. Now it's like, boy, they can't even get into the zone. Like, this looks like a totally different power play than what we saw at the beginning of the season.
Maybe when the schedule gets a little more manageable, they're going out west again, but at least they have this week an opportunity to practice at Fifth Third Arena. They've been traveling so much, so many back-to-backs where they end up having an automatic day off the following day, that, practice time has been sparse, to say the least. So maybe they can start working on, they've always been working on power play and things of that nature, but maybe they can, stack some practices and build some momentum in practice that they carry into gameplay. We were spoiled for so long faceoffs. Like, it was a given with Taves. He kind of set the tone because he took so many key draws that, things were going to be fine. And, you're going to win 52% of your draws on a good night. You're going to win around 60. On a bad night, it's going to be in the mid 40s, something like that. When that type of player is gone, like when you look at Dallas and Jamie Benn, he was lights out. I don't think he lost but one draw, maybe.
Yeah, I thought it was one draw, because Troy had pointed it out on the broadcast. He lost one. He was 14-0 going in the third period. Then I thought he lost one to Connor Bedard. But then at the end of the game, I was looking, and Jamie Benn, it said 16 wins, 0 losses. And Roope Hintz also, he had 12 wins, 2 losses. So between the two of them, I mean, they were 28 and for 30. They only lost 2 combined faceoffs. And so you look at a team like Dallas, I mean, you could probably go back and watch every single one of those faceoffs that Dallas won, and you're like, oh, they generated maybe a chance off of it, or it was sustained offensive zone time directly from it. So, man, it's really hard I think you can survive if your faceoff percentage is in the 45% range, but when it's below 30%, I don't know, whichever team, it could be the worst team in the NHL, you're going to have a tough night winning the hockey game.
Yeah. And so as this rebuild continues and we're looking, we're talking about offense and generating more chances off power plays and whatnot, now we're going to get into things like who's going to be that Jonathan Taves reliable face-off winner in key moments of hockey games. So we're going to look, what's Frank Nazar like at the dot and things of that nature. Let's get into Connor Bedard. As we talk about this, a lot of frustrating tones kind of coming from us as we kind of beat the drum to the same beat that has been going on here over the last 15 games. You can see it from Connor on the ice. You can see it from him off the ice, when he has a 3-assist game, 3 primary assists, and, somebody wants to make a positive comment to him, you could just tell he's still thinking about the goals that he doesn't have. And, 3 goals in 15 games is not up to his standard. And if you read the body language and you watch him and you see those ISO cameras after he gets looks, and you just see the shrug and the demonstrative reaction, at least from him in to his degree of that, you can see that it's starting to pile up a bit on him.
For sure. And that's someone who is, by the way, is going to be hard on himself no matter what.
Yeah.
But when he goes 6 straight games without scoring a goal, you could definitely feel the frustration mounting, and you can see it on the ice too. Even the Ilya Lyubushkin play where he kicks his way a stick, and maybe that was more the result of what was going on in the hockey game and less about himself. But he had a breakaway opportunity in the first period. It was at the end of a shift that ended up finishing 1 minute and 24 seconds. So it was long. It was a long shift, and he was probably out of gas. But Pat, something confuses me about Bedard. He just never goes to the backhand, and it's funny to me because his childhood idol was Sidney Crosby, who has the best backhand maybe of all time in the NHL, and one of the other guys that he grew up watching, Patrick Kane, has a top 3 backhand in the NHL. And so he's so good at doing the going from the backhand to forehand, that quick. We've seen it so many times. He maybe does it at least one time per game at this point, and he's had success doing it. But on that breakaway specifically against Dallas in the first period, if he keeps that on his backhand, he's going to get a shot off.
Yeah.
But if he went to the forehand, and it allowed the defenseman to lift up his stick. And so if he would have kind of stayed on his backhand, probably it wouldn't have been a high quality chance, but he would have at least been able to muster something off of it. And I don't know if this is, I don't want to say, like, does he have the yips going to the backhand, or is he just so comfortable doing that backhand forehand move that he knows that he can get that shot at any point? I'm not sure.
Yeah. I think it's because his bread and butter is the forehand wrister and able to change angles. And throughout his progression in hockey, he's always been able to get that forehand off no matter where he is on the ice. Now you get to this level, there's less time and space. I just have seen too many times over the last 2 years where the lane and the shot is there on the backhand. Yes, he gets it over to the forehand and gets it off, but it comes at a worse angle, or a defender gets a stick in the lane and alters the release of the shot. And the thing you talk about with Sidney and any backhand, the biggest thing about a backhand is its deception. The goalie doesn't know necessarily where the puck, and sometimes the shooter doesn't know it either, how the puck's going to come off the backhand. So, it's something that I'd love to see the analytics of just how many times, in a game / season he uses his backhand, because obviously we know how lethal his forehand is. But you make a great point. He's had now 3 breakaways in the last 3 games, and he doesn't get a shot off in Dallas on the breakaway. If he uses the backhand there, he at least gets a shot on goal.
Right. And to his credit, that backhand forehand move he's so good at it that I think that actually throws off goaltenders, because goaltenders are expecting him to go backhand on those shots. And when he can pull it over to his forehand so quickly and kind of slingshot it so fast, I think that actually is a strength of his and can be a deception type play. But on a play like yesterday, or the play yesterday, it was like, if he stays on the backhand, he at least gets the shot off. And so maybe it's just a psychological thing where it's his primary move is to take this to the forehand right away, because that's his bread and butter. But on some instances, I think you have just recognizing the situation, just not being afraid to use the backhand, and also keeping goaltenders honest, because if he goes to that move all the time, people are going to, goaltenders are going to study that and
you're going to overplay. You're going to expect him, like, even when he's on his backhand, you're expecting him to go to forehand. So I think it's certainly something to keep an eye on as this goes forward. TNT had the broadcast on Wednesday night. Wayne Gretzky is he's just a treasure to have the great one as a ambassador to this sport. And, he's been gone from the game 25 years now, and he is as visible as he ever was. And he had comments on Connor Bedard dealing with the frustration. Here's what the great one, Wayne Gretzky, had to say on TNT.
It's tough to play in the National Hockey League. It's not easy. So many good players now, and the game is so fast. And if I had one bit of advice for Bedard, you can't get frustrated. You can't get down. One guy doesn't win or lose championships. You got to rely on your teammates. You got to have belief in the guys around you. And, it's frustrating when it's crazy because, the reward for being the best player in the world is you go to the worst team in the NHL. And so that's just the system. And that's how we get younger teams to get better. And that's how we keep parodying the game. But he can't get down and frustrated. It's a marathon. It's not a sprint. It's only 10 or 12 games into the season, to his second season. He's so smart. He's so intelligent. He plays like he's 28 or 29 years old with his brain. And he can't get frustrated and disappointed in what's happening right now. You just got to keep your nose down and keep working hard. And I'm sure that's what he does because he has a great deal of respect for the game. And, he gets a lot of attention, and people have a great deal of respect for him.
At the most basic part of his comment is, things are set up for the best player in the world to go to the worst team in the league. And that, in a nutshell, is how they create parity. And that's how, most sports award their, the bottom feeders in the standings. They give them the best draft picks. And so Connor, came to Chicago, and obviously, the team is in a massive rebuild, and the talent level isn't where it needs to be to win and have a sustained winning attack. And I think he needs to realize that, even if he goes out and has a 2-goal game, it's still going to be tough sledding for this team because he cannot carry this team to the playoffs. At times, down the road, he will, but that's when the talent level, comes up collectively for this team. They're always going to rely on him to some degree to carry this team offensively. But right now, with where they're at, I feel like he's shouldering so much of it, and he just doesn't want to lose. And I get that. But one thing we saw in Regina, it wasn't like he was on a juggernaut of a team in juniors. In fact, there was talk about trying to move him to a better team in the WHL. And, he decided to stay in Regina and, kind of experience the highs and lows that the sport gives and try to carry that team, which he did. But, right now in the National Hockey League, one player cannot do it. And I'm just curious your thoughts on what Wayne had to say and kind of how you feel, Connor is reacting to the losing thus far, a year plus into his NHL career.
Yeah, Connor Bedard he's very loyal. So he stayed loyal to Regina, and he's just loyal to the teams that invest in him. And it's tough because when Frank Saravalli came to town, he did a sit-down interview with Connor Bedard as well, and was asking him, I think, about just ways to improve. And he was like, I want to improve defensively. And I think one of the follow-ups by Frank was, what was kind of the biggest adjustment that you've had to make to the NHL? And he like acknowledged, he's like ways to impact the game without having the puck, because he was like, when I was in juniors, and he's like, I don't want to sound arrogant, but like I had the puck a lot, and it was easy for him to maybe dance around all 5 guys in juniors because he was miles ahead of everyone that he was playing against. And we even saw it in the World Juniors where 23 points in 6 games. It's like he was so much better than all of his peers too, around a similar age. Well, when you get to the NHL, it's really hard to carry a team by yourself, especially one that is near the bottom of the standings. I think of the Edmonton Oilers with McDavid and Draisaitl, two of the best players in the world, and they have such a hard time breaking through to win the Stanley Cup. And for a while, they had trouble even getting out of playoff rounds because it was McDavid on one line, Draisaitl on another, and they just didn't have the supporting cast around them, whether it was on the third or fourth lines or even on the back end or goaltending. And so I appreciate that Connor holds himself to such a high standard. Nick Foligno was saying that in the interview with the TNT guys before the game. He's like, I'd rather he hold himself to a really high standard than us having to kind of squeeze that out of somebody. And he also cares so much about winning that he's not frustrated if he's on a 6-game goal drought and maybe they're winning. But if he's on a 6-game goal drought and they're losing, he takes that personally, like, I'm not doing my part to help this team win. And so it was wise wisdom by Wayne Gretzky to kind of even him to kind of realize, hey, this is going to be really hard for you to do it by yourself. Utilize your teammates more. Where I will side with Connor a little bit is a lot of the teammates that he's going to be playing with long-term are not even here yet, sniffing the NHL. They're still in college. They're still in juniors. They're still in the minor leagues with Levshinov, Korchinski, Frank Nazar, Slaggert. So a lot of the guys he's playing with now are kind of just placeholders until the real guys that he's going to be playing with long-term, hopefully on the next great Blackhawks team, arrive in the NHL.
So in the interim, it seems like it's been a real kind of potpourri of the lines and who's going to be with him on a given night. How would you attack trying to find the right line mates for him? Because, you only have so many options. It seems like they've tried just about every one the first
Except
15
one.
games. Huh?
Except one. And it's the player.
Bertuzzi, right?
Correct. It's the player that he was playing with all of training camp. And the day before the season opener, they separated Bedard and Bertuzzi. So the line that I would roll out on Sunday against Minnesota, I would reunite Bedard with Teuvo Teravainen because they had the early success together. And I would put Tyler Bertuzzi on that left wing. Bertuzzi had a really slow start to the season, to the point where I was watching Blackhawks games and I was like, how many did he play today? Like, I didn't even notice Bertuzzi. Now I'm watching and I'm like, you could see the impact he's making on the power play. He's got 3 goals in his last 5 games. He's had several grade A opportunities within those games as well. Feels like Bertuzzi's got the confidence now. And so I would put Bertuzzi with Bedard and go back to Teravainen, who they had some early success with this season.
I couldn't agree more. Because I looked at last night with Taylor Hall and Reichel, and I was like, who's retrieving the puck in this group, And I like Bertuzzi's game as of late. I thought he got off to a slow start, but and you're right. He and Teuvo, Bedard and Teuvo have probably the best chemistry. Kurashev might be, next on that list, as we saw last year. So we will see how that plays out, but I like what you're thinking with trying to jumpstart that, and I'd like them to load up the top power play unit, and I don't know, maybe they got to go 5 forwards. I don't know what the answer is to try to set up the power play, but like you said. The 5 failed zone entries against Detroit. It's just frustrating. Just you can't set up, and it's like this team is already challenged offensively to when you get a man advantage and you end up giving up the better chance to the penalty kill. It's really frustrating.
Yeah, the 5 forwards is actually interesting because that honestly had never crossed my mind until you said that, and it's interesting because the Hawks haven't found ways to get Bedard, Kurashev, and Teravainen all on the same sheet of ice together without kind of taking away from what each other is good at. Like 5-on-5, you put them on the ice, and it's like, okay, they're a lot of the same players, and you can throw out maybe a guy like Lucas Reichel as well, but you can do it in a way where it's like, do you put Bedard at the point? Do you put Kurashev and Teravainen on the flank? So that way all three of them are kind of in a familiar territory, and Bedard is, it's easy for him to play the point than maybe somebody else, or Kurashev. I don't know who it is, but the reason why the 5-man or the 5-forward unit would be a potentially something to explore is because entries are the problem. And if you put Kurashev, Teravainen, Reichel, Bedard, all four of them on the same power play unit, they can figure it out together. It's kind of like,
you like to think they could.
Right, because that's their bread and butter. Like a lot of those power play skilled guys, where they think the game offensively. Over time, you would like to think they would figure it out, but you just know that it would kind of make you nervous, because then you don't have a D-man to protect any shorthanded situations. But I would give up shorthanded situations if it meant breaking through on the power play.
Yeah. I think that's the main reason why they tried it a little bit last year. And then actually, I remember talking to Troy Murray and Darren Pang, and they both acknowledged that the best the power play looked last year was the brief time that they were using 5 forwards on it. And so maybe you have to give up that odd man rush once in a while, going back the other way, and rely on a forward to defend there, versus what we've been seeing for the majority of the last year plus, which is a highly ineffective power play that once in a while gets going, and it's usually when the penalty kill they're going up against is not an aggressive one. As we put a bow on this podcast, any takeaways or final thoughts about Patrick Kane's second trip back to the United Center in the opposing team's sweater?
Yeah, great to see him. So I was I do the WGN radio post-game shows from the booth upstairs, and I was doing my show and I was talking, and then I subconsciously saw like a group of people right outside the Detroit locker room, or where their tunnel is. And I saw it was Kane's family, and Kane had come out, was saying hi to everyone. Alex DeBrincat came out and was saying hi to family and friends. And then all of a sudden I see Patrick Kane grab his son and takes little Patty boy inside the Red Wings locker room. And they're in there for like a couple minutes. Then he comes back out and kind of gives Patty back to Amanda, and then obviously has to leave to go catch the team bus. So it was just nice to see, like, Kane's dad was at the morning skate again. Like, it just felt like old times. Like this was yesterday. But it's always special when Patrick Kane can come back to Chicago. And gotta say this, I know he didn't get on the score sheet, but he played much better to this game than he did last game, even though last game was the memorable one with the overtime winner.
He should have got a helper on he made a great sauce pass to Larkin that set up the DeBrincat goal. The puck ends up going off, I think, a Dickinson, and so it kind of nullified the second assist on the play. But I thought he could have, a generous scorekeeper might have given him the secondary assist on DeBrincat's goal with 1.5 seconds to go.
Yeah, it was funny too, because I was watching Kane. He gave Larkin the pass, and then Kane was getting ready to hop off the ice, and he looks up and he realized there were 4 seconds, and he ended up staying on the ice, probably because he saw a scoring chance develop, and he's like, no, I'm going to get this plus if this goes in, because, the hockey players are weird about the plus minus rating.
Yeah.
And so it was funny when you see DeBrincat score the goal, the 4 Red Wings are celebrating, and Kane is so late to the pile because he was
I noticed that too. Yeah, I saw the same thing.
He was in the neutral zone, just waiting around to see the play develop. Hey, What did you think of the strip? Kane strips Bedard, Bedard goes back and strips Kane, and then the two kind of, I think Kane said something to him. The cameras kind of panned away, but it was funny that it was like, it was almost like Kane saying, no, this is still,
in my house.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's funny. You and I were in the scrum with Patrick on Wednesday morning, and Phil Thompson from the Tribune asked him about Bedard hitting him last year, and again, it was not a resounding hit by any means, but it was a hit nonetheless. And you could tell, like, he was smiling in his answer, but like, again, we're talking about two of the most competitive players we've ever been around. And he's like, yeah, maybe I underestimated him a little bit. He was wearing the bubble at the time. Like, it was like little teeny jabs, here and there. And it was like, I guess I just took away from it, like, there's a ton of respect for one another. And, obviously Connor looks up to Kane. And Kane appreciates that the game is in great shape with young stars like Connor now being on the stage. But at the end of the day, they are competitors, and they don't like one to get the better of the other. And that was kind of my underlying take, like, ton of respect on both sides of the ledger. But at the end of the day, when you stripped all that down, they're still highly competitive.
Absolutely. And I think back to the hit in the last meeting, the bigger hit, I think Kane was really, Kane was kind of like taken back by it, because sometimes those rookies can come in and be like overly respectful to the elite NHL players. But it was almost like Bedard was like, what? Bedard knew exactly what he was doing, who he was hitting, like how that was gonna go. And I remember when Kane was first developing some chemistry with Alex DeBrincat, he was like, one of the reasons why I gravitated to DeBrincat over time is because he wasn't afraid to give it back to me. Like there was a moment, I can't remember which game it was. I think it might have been in Nashville, where DeBrincat was like yelling at Kane, and they were going back and forth. And Kane, after the game, or maybe the next practice, was like, man, I love that about him, because sometimes these new guys come in and they just want to get the puck to me and they want to worship me. And it's like, no, like I want you to be able to give it back to me, because that's how we can grow in our chemistry. And so I think Kane low-key appreciated like how hard Bedard plays, and wasn't kind of putting Kane on this pedestal. He off the ice, Bedard, gushes about Kane, just the way he's like, I'd watch his highlights all the time. And, and so in that respect, Bedard has a ton of respect for Kane, but I think the respect was reciprocated when Kane was like, this guy's not treating me like a superstar on the ice. Like, he's a competitor and wants to be great too.
Hawks entertain the Minnesota Wild, who are off to a great start this year. I think they've won 7 of 10. So we will see them next at the United Center. Kirill the Thrill Kaprizov and the Wild. That game is at 6:00 on Sunday. Pre-game on CHSN at 5:30. That's going to do it for the Blackhawks Breakaway Podcast. I'm Charlie Roumeliotis. I'm Pat Boyle. Thanks for watching.